Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2023 U.S. Open DFS Tactics show. We've got lineups to make, we've got weather to check, we've got odds and price boards to look at. It's going to be a fun show. Looking forward to it. I don't want to waste any time. So, all statistics provided tonight and every night are from fantasynational.com. It is the best tool out there for your money. It's going to make you a much smarter gambler and a much better DFS player. Go check them out. It is simply well worth your investment. In the description to the video, there are links to all of the social media. This is my Twitter and Instagram, where I posted research around the winners of the U.S. Open earlier this week. So if you would like to see my weekly research on the PGA Tour, give me a follow over at your preferred social media site. Twitter is also where I place my betting cards every week for the PGA Tour. That's no different. That'll be out later this evening after the DFS Tactics show. So if you want to see my betting card every week, give me a follow over at Twitter. And then Twitter is also where I place my baseball content, looking like it's going to be about 4 to 5 days a week as I settle into a routine here. But if you want to see some quick hitting baseball content for the nightly slate using DraftKings pricing, then give me a follow over at Twitter as well. Lastly, for social media, Gabe's Twitter is also in the description. A reminder, I will be over at Gabe's chat in Substack to his article, The Fringe, after the show this evening. So if you want to continue the DFS discussion from the show this evening, follow me on over there. Consider giving Gabe a follow, and I highly do suggest you subscribe to The Fringe. It's a very good read. It's a great way to start your weekly research for the PGA Tour. And then lastly, we are live. Chat is open. I want to hear from you all. Who are you pivoting to? Who are you fading away from? Who do you think wins the 2023 U.S. Open? I've got a pretty spicy 6K play for you all. So jump in chat. Would love to hear what you're thinking for this week at LA Country Club. All that good stuff. Looking forward to it. So let's figure out our strategies and our tactics for the 2023 U.S. Open. And we're going to start, like we always do for the DFS Tactics show, with the Super Forecast at Windfinder. And I'm going to be honest with you, it looks pretty similar for both days. You see Thursday, pretty calm in the morning, wind picks up in the afternoon. Friday, much the same. The difference is perhaps the Friday winds, as of right now, are projected to be a little bit more than the Friday afternoon winds are projected to be a little bit more than the Thursday afternoon winds. So perhaps the Friday PM wave gets a little bit worse of a draw. I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not factoring it much into my decision making at all. Perhaps if I need a tiebreaker between two players, I would prefer the Thursday PM, Friday AM player, but not really factoring it in. Looks like a great weekend for golf. Highs in the mid 60s, maybe up to 70. A little bit of wind, but nothing too drastic. The course is going to be very, very difficult, but I really do think perhaps gettable in some places. So there's a look at the forecast. I will zoom out, I guess, a little bit and look at the weekend for you all as well. Again, no wind to really be concerned about, at least in the forecast for Saturday or Sunday. So we're not going to be looking at any wind metrics. I didn't put any wind metrics in my thought process. So that's what I have for you in terms of a forecast. So we'll move to Fantasy National. And a quick recap. You'll see the date has changed, and I'll go into that when we start talking about the mixed condition model. But the filter we've talked about all week, the U.S. Open is traditionally one of, if not the most difficult tournaments on the PGA Tour. So since the beginning of 2022, your top performers, or top total performers, in rounds that are difficult have been Scotty Scheffler, Rory, Matt Fitzpatrick, Victor Hovland, Jon Rahm, Shane Lowry, Max Homa, Xander, Cam Smith, and Keegan Bradley. Scroll down a little bit for you all, see the top 25 or so there. Continuing on down the list, a few names: Sung Jae, Colin Morikawa, Wyndham Clark, Tommy Fleetwood, Sam Burns, that's your top 15, and so on down the line there to Tyrrell Hatton, top 25. And then the other end of the spectrum, these players have not played well in difficult rounds since the beginning of the calendar year last year. Nico Echeverria, Carlos Ortiz, Paul Barjon, Stuart Sink, Scott Stallings, Thomas Peters, Francesco Molinari, Harris English, Dylan Wu, Hayden Buckley, and so on down the list there. Skipping, a few players that don't have many rounds, like Gordon Sargent, Aldrich Potgieter, players of that ilk, or very small sample sizes, but tried to highlight the names that have quite a few rounds on the PGA Tour. There's your bottom performers, or your worst performers, when rounds have been difficult the past year and a half. So with that, not going to do too much more in terms of quick hitting review or anything. Let's go ahead and just jump straight to the mixed condition model that I have made for the week. And you will see that I ended up using the difficult to par filter on all of the metrics except for some specific ones, say the around the green and the putting. The main draw for me to use the difficult to par filter, or I guess there are two main draws. One, this is the US Open. It is generally very, very difficult. I believe we've had one round of scoring to average in the past 6 years. So very, very confident that all 4 rounds are going to be difficult. The second draw is, at least for me personally, it's a way for me to try and level the playing field for the live players. Now, they would have 8 rounds if I used just 2023 data, but the Masters data is proprietary, so we wouldn't have off the tee or approach and things of that nature. So I wanted to make sure I tried to level the playing field, and I did this with the PGA Championship as well. Now the difference is, in the PGA Championship, I went all the way back to 2021. And when I looked yesterday and earlier today at the performance of the players who were rising in the PGA rankings going all the way back to 2021, players like Abraham Answer, DJ Cam Smith, those players, and mainly it's Abraham Answer and Joaquin Niemann, I should mention as well. Joaquin Niemann and Abraham Answer, the two main culprits here. They really rose when I took the data all the way back to 2021. And when we go to Microsoft Excel and the reveal of my rankings, you will see that Answer and Niemann aren't nearly as high when we only go back to 2022. So I am not immune to criticism or to try and improve on my method. So that is the adjustment that I have made this week for the US Open from the PGA. So I did want to include all difficult to round or scoring difficult to par filter, but I did make the adjustment of the timeline only going back to 2022 as opposed to going all the way back to 2021. So we'll see if that brings better results for this major. And I wanted to make sure I clarified that before we get too much further into the process. But for the mixed condition model this week, 5% in off the tee. And if I don't say anything, it's just with the filter difficult to par. So 5% off the tee. If anything, I think this is a little light. I had 2 to 3 main parts of the mixed condition model, 2 to 3 main metrics I wanted to focus on, just kind of ran out of percent. And indeed, if fairways are easy to hit here, as we talked about Monday evening, then I think off the tee is going to have a little bit less of importance if they are easy to hit. So only 5% here. If anything, I think it's a little light. I would absolutely not blame you one bit if you wanted to adjust and put perhaps 10% in your rankings. 15% in strokes gained approach. Again, this is my preferred statistic, my bias, and what I feel is the most important shot in golf. It's the U.S. Open. It's going to be difficult. Iron play has always been an elite part of major championship golf. So 15% in strokes gained approach. Would have loved to have put 20%. Again, I needed percentage to put in some other metrics. So 15% here. 10% in around the green in long rough. And again, I've only went back to 2022 to keep things even with the difficult to par filter for the live players. So around the green, I think is going to be a major factor this week. These greens, the number that I have seen, the average green size is 6,500 square feet. That would be a little bit larger than the average tour green, but they are going to be very fast. They're going to be very firm. The greens are going to be pretty hard to hit, I believe. So I wanted to see who is able to play around the green in long rough. Hopefully you've seen some videos. If you haven't, believe me, the ball just disappears around the green in this rough. So it's going to be long. It's going to be difficult to play out of. 10% in around the green. 10% in putting. And I did end up only looking at lightning bent greens. Again, this is a little bit of conjecture on my end. So if these are, or if there is a round that the greens are only listed as fast, then I'll be weak to that. But this is the U.S. Open. They generally push the envelope. So I imagine all 4 rounds are going to be lightning speed. So I wanted to see who the best lightning speed bent green putters are. 10%, we looked at Microsoft Excel Monday night and saw how, at least for the years that we have strokes gained data for the U.S. Open, putting was pretty darn important along with around the green, but putting was pretty darn important. I kind of waffled back and forth between 5 to 10%. I ended up going with 10%. So if anything, it needs to be lowered a little bit and maybe off the tee brought up a little bit. But this is where I am leaning this week for the U.S. Open. So 10% in putting versus 10% off the tee. So I am favoring the short game versus off the tee. 15% in bogeys avoided. And pars are not just good scores at a U.S. Open. Pars are great scores at the U.S. Open. So I want to see who the best bogey avoiders are, especially when a round is difficult. If you're able to scramble pars, you're going to be rising on the leaderboard. So 15% in bogeys avoided. This is the second of 3 main statistics along with stroke gain approach, and we'll talk about the third one here in a little bit. 5% in fairways gained. I mentioned on Monday evening's Data Dive show that I was favoring fairways over distance. If fairways are indeed easy to hit, then this is 5% that is not useful in the mixed condition model. I still believe that fairways are going to be pretty difficult to hit, or at least they won't be easy to hit. So I've got 5% fairways gained, but this is easily, in my opinion, the weakest part of my mixed condition model. 5% in greens gained. Again, I would love to have put more percentage in here. Ran out of percentage. I think greens are going to be difficult to hit. However, these greens are larger, so perhaps it's going to be a little bit easier than I think it will be. So 5% in greens gained, and that's really kind of what I just had left for that metric. 5% and 200 plus proximity. And again, this is a little bit of conjecture on my end, but with the amount of long par fours there are here, there are 3 450 to 500 yard par fours, and there are 3 from 500 or 3 par fours that are 500 plus. Plus, if you think the players are going to attack any of the par fives into, and don't forget there are 3 par threes that are 225 plus. So that can also play into it a little bit. So that's why I felt pretty comfortable going with 200 plus procs. I didn't really debate any more or less percentage. I was pretty dead set at 5%, but thinking about the specifics of LA Country Club and the setup this week, I do feel pretty strongly that 200 plus proximity is the way you want to look at if you're going to factor in proximity. Lastly, for the pars 3s, 4s, and 5s, is pretty simple. Not a whole lot of reasoning behind it. There are 3 par 5s on the course. There are 5 par 3s. And the majority of your holes are par 4s. And at least specifically for the par 4s, we have seen at the PGA Championship and this Monday for the U.S. Open, par 4s are just an extremely important factor in major championship golf. You have to play those well. So that was the third of the 3 main portions of the mixed condition model. 15% in strokes gained par 4. Didn't separate out any specific length, because you do have a drivable, you do have a short one that's from 350 to 4. If I was going to separate out any length, it would have probably been the 500 plus, but there are 3 par 4s that measure 450 to 5. So I just felt like all par 4s was the way to go. Again, only 3 par 5s. The players are probably have to play these pretty well. So I could understand if you want to put a little bit more emphasis into par 5s, but I wanted to make sure I emphasized par 3s more since there are 5 of them at LACC. So there's a look at my mixed condition model, and hopefully I have given you the thoughts and the reasoning behind such and things to think about that I could be weak to, or that could be holes in this specific mixed condition model. Off the tee could very well be too light in my mixed condition model this week. Putting could be a little bit too heavy. That would be my guess if I am incorrect this week around those 2. If scrambling specifically, or sand saves, if fairways doesn't really matter, then this is going to be the easily the weakest portion of the model. If greens matter a little bit more, so on and so forth. So hopefully that gives you an idea of my thought process where I was when I made this mixed condition model. With that, we will move to Microsoft Excel, the reveal of my rankings, and then go into the price board and figure out where we want to pivot to and who to fade away from. So the rankings for the 2023 U.S. Open go as such. My number 1 player this week is Xander Schauffele. Rory, number 2. Scotty Scheffler, 3rd. Shane Lowry and Matt Fitzpatrick round out the top 5. Victor Hovland, John Rahm, Patrick Cantlay, Colin Morikawa, and Tony Finau round out my top 10. A quick reminder, FNGC rank is just purely analytics by the numbers, taken straight from Fantasy National. Percent owned, I always factor that into my rankings. Obviously, we want to find as unique or players that are unique compared to others, so I do factor that in to my rankings. Normally, course value is performance specifically at that course. However, this is a major. It generally rotates except for the Masters. Course value here is performance at the U.S. Open, any U.S. Open, going back to 2012. So that's why you see Xander has an extremely low course value. He has never finished outside 14th. His worst performance at a U.S. Open is tied for 14th. So that's why his course value is so extremely low. Honestly, Rory McIlroy's is very low. Fitzpatrick, your defending champion. So that is the explanation of what the course value is for the major this week. It is not for LA Country Club. It is for the U.S. Open. So there's my top 10. Again, not a whole lot of surprise here. You can always probably argue the ordering of such players. Perhaps Shane Lowry being fourth might be a surprise for some. But again, when I am factoring in bogeys avoided, it's such a heavy part of my mixed condition model. He's a bogey avoider. He's a grinder. And with the fact that he is pretty low projected owned, that's why he's rising in my rankings. I'm a little surprised by Fitzpatrick only being at 8.5%. Look, his irons haven't been great, but again, just like Lowry, a bogey avoider, the defending champion. He plays par fours well. So no real shock for me here in the top 10. Good evening, Bruce. Thanks for jumping in chat. Such a crapshoot this week. I agree with your modeling. I appreciate that. I mean, like I said, I know it won't be perfect, and that's why I like to explain my thought process and what I think I could be weak to. That way you can make adjustments based on your thoughts and the way you see a week play out. But I appreciate that. And then off the tee and approach may be interchangeable. Don't have the drive, got to have a very strong approach and vice versa. Yeah, so as I was mentioning going through the mixed condition model, I've just underweighted off the tee. If anything, I'm too light on it because I only have 5% in it. But if the fairways are indeed easy to hit, that's going to reduce the importance of off the tee in my mind this week. I don't have anything with driving distance. I mentioned Monday I was favoring fairways gained, so I have 5% in fairways. I've just been more so doing the scrambling, and not scrambling as in the statistic. I mean 10% around the green, putting's at 10%, bogeys avoided, just these guys who will grind pars, and that's why Lowry is high in my model. Fitzpatrick, high in my model. He's a little bit lower, but somebody like Patrick Reed generally wouldn't rate out well for me because his iron play isn't all that great. But you see, he's just a bogey avoider around the green, the putting. So I've really emphasized that portion of a player's game this week. So thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Looking forward to hopefully continuing the momentum. And we're going to find some uniqueness this week because I do have one pretty spicy 6K play to recommend for you all. But let's sort on the price and figure out where the chalk is and where we think we want to gravitate towards. So in the 10Ks, or in the 5 digits, we have 5 players. Scotty Scheffler at 11.4, John Rahm at 11.1, Brooks at 10.8, Patrick Cantlay at 10.3, and Victor at 10,000 even. Now you see 4 of these 5 players are in my top 10, and I always have to mention that Brooks is for whatever reason, he never rates out well for me. Whether it's due to his injury and his inconsistent play, his irons aren't always the best, and that is my preferred type of player. So he always rates lower than he should. There's no way I would have Brooks 47th in this field. So in the 10Ks, it's conceivable that I would have exposure to all 5 of these players. With that said, Scotty Scheffler is the most projected owned player as of right now, and he is the most expensive. I understand he is on an absolute tear right now ball striking, number one in irons, number one in par fours. He avoids bogeys, par threes, par fives. Everything is elite. And from what I've gathered, he has changed his putter this week. But he still has to make putts. And he hasn't done that in a little while in these big tournaments. Now, he's not making putts, and he's still finishing inside the top 5 or top 10. So fading Scottie Scheffler is a very, very dangerous game. But you have to plant your flag somewhere, and there's already chalk that I know I'm going to use a little bit lower in the price board. I think I am willing to take the chance that Scottie Scheffler doesn't putt well again this week. And if he even comes close to field average, he's going to probably win. But that's where I'm going to take my chance. I think Scottie Scheffler is a fade for me, especially because of the prohibitive price and the fact that if you take him, you're setting yourself up for a 5v5 right off the bat. And I think Scottie Scheffler's floor is lower than people think. Now, his ceiling is clearly the best player in the world. I think his floor is a little bit lower than people might think, and that's where I'm leaning for Scheffler. But that is a very, very difficult to recommend a fade. I'm fading him too. Pray for us. Yeah, I mean, it's dangerous, but you can't play everybody. You just can't unless you're going to fill out 150 lineups. You just can't play everybody. So for me, I would be more apt to turn to Jon Rahm, considering of his 11 wins on tour. And Jon Rahm has 11 wins on tour. Five of them have come in the state of California, including the U.S. Open at Torrey Pines 2 years ago. So that's where I would go if I'm going to the 11Ks. I would go to Jon Rahm over Scheffler, but it's difficult to do. And I don't particularly want to go to Jon Rahm. He's still very, very popular, very, very prohibitive in price. Brooks is never going to rate out well for me. I say it every single tournament he's in. Fade Brooks, especially for a major. Fade Brooks at your, at your own risk. It's big game Brooks. So he never rates out well for me. He should be higher. Having said that, he's going to be popular. So take that what you will. I'm doing the 50 cent 150 max and fading him, but then using him in my 220 max lineups. Yeah, that's one way to do it. Sure, that's one way to do it. Just to give you the coverage. I don't hate it. Cantley and Hovland. Cantley, again, California guy, so you're going to hear that narrative all week. He is the number one bogey avoider when it's difficult. He is very, very good on bent, but he's better generally when it's fast, not lightning. So that does give me a little bit of pause on Patrick Cantley. He's been very good at par fives, very good off the tee, if that's indeed more important than what I've weighted it. He's the most unique of the 10Ks per Fantasy National right now, so that's pretty appealing. Victor Hovland has been playing a whole lot better, and again, that around the green game is getting better. So I would not be as concerned with this number as it shows. And you see the fact that the putting on lightning bent, he's top 15 in this field. So every single one of these players in the 10K has merits. For me, I am a little concerned with Patrick Cantley, but him being the most unique, and he's played U.S. Opens well. He doesn't have elite finishes, but he doesn't have anything. He doesn't have any clunker made cuts either. Everything's been middling or better. I'm trying to talk myself into Patrick Cantlay being number one, and I don't think I can do it. I think I'm going to have to put Jon Rahm number one in the 10Ks for me. I mean, his historical performance in California, already won one U.S. Open. So I'll go Jon Rahm first. I'll go Cantlay second, Hovland third, Brooks fourth, and Scotty fifth. And by no means am I advocating that Scotty Scheffler is going to play bad. It's a lot of ownership, and I'm just kind of hoping his putter stays cold, because you can't play everybody. Moving into the nines: Rory, Xander, Max Homa, Colin Morikawa, Jordan Spieth, Matt Fitzpatrick, and Cam Smith. Evening, Darnell. Thanks for jumping in chat. Appreciate you jumping in. You just missed the 10Ks. So hopefully you have an idea on what you are wanting to do for your lineups. That's why we are here, to try and figure out where our pivots and our fades and all that stuff. And how have you made any wagers, all that good stuff. So what are you thinking about for the U.S. Open? But moving into the nines, I mentioned when we were talking about the 10Ks. Hey, evening P. Thanks for jumping in chat. Love it. It looks like a full crowd this evening. Loving it. How are you feeling about the U.S. Open? What wagers have you made? Who are you pivoting to and fading away from? All that good stuff. Loving the interaction. And make sure you have your questions ready, because I will get to those towards the end of the show when we start making lineups. But in the 10Ks, in the 9Ks, I mentioned how I was going to be using some chalk. I am not going to be getting away from Xander. Like I said, this course value is ridiculously low. He is built for U.S. Opens. He's got all-around game. So I'm going to be using Xander. I'm not going to be getting away from that, and that's why I'm a little bit more comfortable fading Scheffler. I can't say it's a full fade, but I'm still using some chalk. So you can't use everybody. I'm going to be using Xander. He is the number one player in my model. I really like Fitzpatrick, especially since he's the most unique of the 9Ks per Fantasy National. I mean, look, he's the defending U.S. Open champion. His irons might not be the best, but the guy, he grinds. He avoids bogeys. Number 2 in par 4s. You can knock him for the lightning bent putting, sure. But I've got that weighted, if anything, weighted a little heavy. And he's still 8th by the numbers. He's always played U.S. Opens well, because pars are great scores, and he finds ways to get pars. Good at par 3s, elite at par 5s when it's difficult. He's elite off the tee if it matters more. I don't understand why Fitzpatrick's at 8.5%. I'm going to be using a lot of Fitzpatrick. Now, a lot of times when I use Fitzpatrick and back him heavily, he falls apart. So that's probably the kiss of death. That means you probably should stay the hell away from him. But everything I see says to back Fitzpatrick, especially at this low ownership. Spieth, I mean, look, I thought his wrist bothered him, and then he goes out and he plays very, very well at the Memorial. I don't know what to do with Spieth. He's pretty popular, so that helps me fade him a little bit. Analytically, it says that he should be pretty good. So do what you want with Jordan Spieth. I'm just being transparent. Is his wrist really bothering him? Is it not? All that. Every time I back Colin Morikawa, it seems like he folds. But his game generally is built for U.S. Opens, minus the putting, of course. But, number 1 in par 3s, number 2 in approach. He is a bogey avoider. So at 11%, it's fair. If anything, that's a little bit too low, in my opinion, on Colin Morikawa, I'm just much, much more inclined to go to Matt Fitzpatrick, as I truly do believe that he will be less ownership than Morikawa, and I don't think he should be. Even with Morikawa, the California narrative and all that stuff. Speaking of California narrative, Max Homa. He's not getting a whole lot of love per the members of Fantasy National. And I'm actually a little bit concerned about Max Homa. You see his U.S. Open track record. It is pretty bad. Now, analytically, everything lines up. He played here for college. So, I mean, he's very familiar with LA Country Club. You know, top 5 in iron play. Par 4s have been very good. I mean, he's even good on lightning bent greens. He doesn't have a bad statistic. 49th is his worst statistic across everything that we gathered this week. But until you show some modicum of success at a U.S. Open, I've got concerns about Max Homa. So I will lose to Max Homa because I think he's going to be more popular than this. I think he's going to be in the 12 to 13% range because of the California connection and all that stuff. So if Max Homa plays well, I will lose. But Max Homa is pretty darn close to a full fade because he has never played U.S. Opens well. He hadn't played majors really all that well. Now he's a much better player than, he has continuously gotten better, sure. But until you prove that you can actually play a very difficult U.S. Open course, I'm suspect. I'm suspect of Homa. And of course, that's probably going to get clipped when he wins this week, but it is what it is. Cam Smith, a little bit the same way. He for as good as he's been in majors, U.S. Opens have been by far his worst. So I'm not there with Cam Smith. The analytics are. So if you like Cam Smith, that's fine. I am much more gravitating to another live player who I normally don't. So a little bit of foreshadowing and a teaser there. But I'm not there with Cam Smith this week. And a lot of it, too, also because Fitzpatrick's right above him in the price board. So in the 10Ks, I'm not going to be able to get away from Xander. It's chalk that I'll eat. He's just built for U.S. Opens. And don't forget, he's a California guy, too. Or at least a West Coast guy. Love Fitzpatrick. Going to be using a whole lot of Fitzpatrick, probably to my downfall. But I'm going to be using Fitzpatrick. We didn't talk about Rory. I think it's fair. You see, he's finally getting some love after I've been talking about him seemingly for a month now. I did not understand why he was so low ownership. And he kept playing well. He just didn't finish the tournament off. So he's finally getting some love as much as he should. It's a fair amount of ownership. Use Rory if you want. You can fade him if you want. I'm just kind of lukewarm on Rory. It's fair. Fair pricing and fair ownership. Morikawa, I guess so. Kind of out on Homa and I'm out on Cam Smith. Why Fitz? Defending champion for one. And the guy's he's a grinder. And you and I have talked about another player we'll talk about in the 8Ks quite a bit. But anytime it's difficult, Fitzpatrick plays very, very well. Pars aren't just good scores. They're great scores at a U.S. Open. And he finds ways to get pars. He's also number 2 in par 4 performance. Fitzpatrick's the defending U.S. Open champion. Yes, it was at Brookline. But he won the U.S. Open last year. And U.S. Opens are generally, they play roughly the same in the sense that they're very, very difficult. Very, very difficult. So I think you and I will disagree on that part in the sense that you don't think it matters. The fact that he's a champion doesn't matter, but it's the fact that he's always played U.S. Opens very, very well, no matter what. And that's one of the reasons why I don't like Homa, because he's not played U.S. Opens very well at all, no matter what kind of course. No matter if it was Torrey Pines or Country Club or Winged Foot, Max Homa hasn't played well. I'm all in on Fitz. All in on Fitz. So, yeah. Moving into the 8s. Not going to go through all of these, spell them out one by one. I went to a non-difficult U.S. Open at Erin Hills when he shot about 50 under. I mean, technically that was still rated as difficult. I think that might have been one of the U.S. Opens that had a round that scored to average. But Brooks was built for Erin Hills as well. Just all that distance and all that run out. I think there is something to be said that you play U.S. Opens well, because they generally set them up as difficult as all can be. So, in the 8Ks, look, Tyrrell Hatton, he's in great form. He has not played U.S. Opens well. He's very popular. I really came into this week thinking I was going to use Tyrrell Hatton, as I mentioned to Joanne on I think it was Monday when she mentioned that she wasn't liking the 8Ks, and I mentioned Hatton. But seeing this amount of ownership, knowing that he hasn't played U.S. Opens the best, and honestly, his around the green game can be suspect at times. I am more comfortable with the idea of fading Hatton now, seeing everything put together. I would have thought no way early this week that I was going to be fading Hatton. I think I can fade Hatton with this amount of ownership. The around the green, which I've put a lot of weight into, and we saw it at the Canadian Open. His around the green game, especially in long rough, can get suspect. So I'm much more off of Tyrrell Hatton than what I was earlier this week. Hideki, this is more chalk I will eat. The guy has played U.S. Opens amazingly. He's missed one cut in his, I think, 10 U.S. Opens. He finished in the top 5 last year. People forget that he was 4th at the Country Club in Brookline. Look, it's all about the putter with Hideki because the ball striking is always going to be there. And this putting, he's won at the Masters before, which is, most of what this Lightning bent is making up. The Memorial and the Masters. And guess what? He's won both of those tournaments. So bent is by far his preferred surface. I like Hideki quite a bit this week. The irons are much better than what this is showing. And as I was mentioning earlier with Fitzpatrick, specifically to you, Darnell, look, you and I go back and forth on Shane Lowry, and I understand he can lay some clunkers. But anytime it's difficult, you got to think about Shane Lowry. He's a bogey avoider. He plays these par fours extremely well. Just like Fitzpatrick, if you want to knock him for the putter, I don't blame you. He's not been good on Lightning bent, but everything else has been good to damn near elite. Par fours are good. Par fives are great. I really like Shane Lowry, especially at 8%. And we'll get into Patrick Reed here in a little bit. You're stealing my thunder, but we'll get into Reed. I really like Shane Lowry. Justin Thomas at 8%. That's very, very appealing. Again, the putter, all that stuff, I get it, but 8% on Justin Thomas. This is almost to the Rory effect right now. I don't understand why Justin Thomas is not getting a whole lot of love, especially considering how difficult this is going to be. 8% on a Justin Thomas is very appealing. Tony Finau, I think this course suits him. I think he's going to be pretty good. 10.5 is fair. I'm a little bit lower on Tony Finau than these other guys, but I think it's fine. You see, I mean, he's 10th in my rankings. I think it's fine. Sung Jae, as much as he's a bogey avoider, man, I just don't know where his game is. Now, 6% on Sung Jae is also very, very appealing. And I think it was 2 weeks ago, maybe for the Memorial, that Sung Jae played fairly well when he was low ownership after people seemed to chalk him week after week. So now that people are off of him, it might be time to jump in on Sung Jae, but I'm a lot more confident in other players around him. You're playing Sung Jae for the uniqueness. And I don't hate the idea of putting him in a lineup or two, to be fair, or to be clear. DJ has always played U.S. Opens well, but I don't know where his game is. He's the one player from Live that I don't have a good grasp on this week. Again, just full transparency. Cam Young, I want to like, but man, I've backed him the past couple of weeks and he's been pretty bad. Jason Day, Sam Burns, I'm not really there. So that's my look at the 8Ks. Hatton, I'm much more comfortable fading now than I was earlier this week. Man, 8% on Justin Thomas looks really appealing. I'm going to be using a whole lot of Shane Lowry, so if he plays poorly, I'm going to struggle. 6% on Sung Jae seems pretty appealing as well. I'm going to be using the chalk in Hideki. So that's a look at the 8Ks. Moving to the upper 7s. I guess he's technically mid-7, but let's talk about Patrick Reed. Patrick Reed is somebody that I'm going to be using, even though he's only 31st in my rankings. Look, the irons aren't this bad. It's a U.S. Open. He plays U.S. Opens fantastic. I'm going to be using some Patrick Reed. He's not the Live guy I was referring to, but he's one of the two. His irons aren't this bad. You see the putting on lightning bent. See the around the green and long rough. Very, very good. I'm going to be using some Patrick Reed. The Live player that I was referring to, though, is actually Bryson. And you see Bryson, by the analytics, is bad. 99th total. 98th purely by the numbers. He's built for U.S. Opens. He looks healthy. I've really liked what I've seen from Bryson. I wasn't on him at the PGA. For as much as, he gets all the attention for the distance, don't forget he is an elite putter. Especially on lightning bent. An elite putter. And I think that's going to have a pretty big effect this week. So I am going to be using some Bryson, even though he is so far down in my rankings. He was the first wager that I locked up Monday morning. I really like Bryson this week. So Bryson and Lowry and Fitzpatrick, if those three don't play well, I will lose. But that's the Live guy that I was referring to that I'll be using, because I usually don't gravitate towards Bryson. Elsewhere, Tommy Fleetwood getting quite a bit of love, obviously, after his very successful Canadian Open. He doesn't have a whole lot of bad statistics in here. 12.5% is a little bit heavy for my liking, but he's one of the best players in the world, and the U.S. Open always brings out the best players in the world, so take that for what you will. Corey Connors, I'm off of. Again, a lot of it due to the fact that I've got a lot of weight around the green. And you see, he's generally not good around the green. He's generally not a good putter. So I'm off of Corey Connors. Tom Kim, he played well at the Country Club last year in Brookline. I do not see LACC fitting him. See the irons, they've been pretty poor. The putter has been pretty poor. I'm not there with Tom Kim. I really like Rose, but my gosh, that's a whole lot of ownership. I don't know if I can back a 16.5% Rose. He is, I think, the second most projected owned player right now behind Scotty. No, third. So it goes Scotty Scheffler, Xander, and then Rose. Rose is number 3 in projected ownership. And I get it because of the price. Gosh, that's a whole lot of ownership. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not advocating to fade him. So if you're comfortable using this chalk, you'll have to find uniqueness elsewhere. But man, that's a whole lot of ownership on Justin Rose. So that's my quick look at the upper end of the sevens. Seems like the 7K range is going to be a make or break this week. It could be, and that's why that's why I'm advocating that I think I have a play or two in the 6Ks. Like if you take Justin Rose, he has to perform well, and even then you're not gaining that much by using him, because this is a game theory type of deal. You're going to be gaining a whole lot more if you fade Rose and he plays poorly than if you use him and he plays well. Hopefully that makes sense. Look, everything lines up that Justin Rose should be pretty good. So he doesn't have a bad statistic. His worst statistic is 58th. So like Max Homa, like analytically everything lines up. But whereas Max Homa's never played U.S. Opens well, and that was my reasoning for being very cautious, there's a whole lot of ownership on Rose. And I'm pretty cautious because of that. Keegan, again, lightning bent. He has not putt generally well, but he's gotten better at putting with that aim point. Don't sleep on Keegan. This week he's an elite level ball striker. I know the analytics don't say that, but he's an elite level ball striker, so don't sleep on Keegan. Wyndham Clark's getting a lot of love. I can take it or leave it. Ricky Fowler getting a whole lot of love. I think I'm a little bit less on Ricky just because of a little bit higher ownership. At the same price, I would much rather go with Adam Scott than I would with Ricky Fowler. You see they're back-to-back in my rankings. So I think I would go with Scott more so than Ricky. I think both are going to be fine. But I think I would want the uniqueness in Scott over Ricky. But I think both will be fine. Let's move to the low sevens. Take a look at Taylor Montgomery. Like, I always knock him for his irons, and they've been bad. There's not a lot over here that has been good. I mean, actually, there's not a lot that's been bad. It's been awful. Off the tee's not been good. Fairway's not been good. Look, I've weighted putting high. If this comes to some putting, I think Taylor Montgomery's going to be okay. I think he'll be okay. This is certainly a very risky play. I would not put Taylor Montgomery in a whole lot of your lineups. But if you're trying to find some uniqueness, especially in the sevens, take a look at Taylor Montgomery due to the putter. Siwoo Kim, very, very chalky for the low sevens. I don't think I'm there, although the around the green game is superb. Okay. I'm not in love with that ownership. Like the player, don't like the ownership. Let's see. Anyone else here that kind of sticks out? Again, long course, difficult course. Think about Gary Woodland. He generally plays fairly well. Now, granted, his win was at Pebble Beach, which was, not long, but Pebble Beach was set up difficult. But generally speaking, I think Gary Woodland should be fine. I'm actually fairly high on Denny McCarthy. I'm surprised to see him at 10.5%. Denny McCarthy's somebody that I've been gravitating towards in the low sevens. Again, all of that around the putter and the short game, but his irons are getting better. His irons keep getting better and better and better. It's only a matter of time before Denny McCarthy really, before he wins. I truly believe that. You saw at the Memorial, he put the ever-living daylights out, but, he was good everywhere else, too. So, I like Denny McCarthy. I'm off of Mito. Look, 13% is just too much for me. I'm just off of Mito. Harris English, take a long look at. The guy's 7 for 7 in making the cut at the U.S. Open. His game seems to be back as he's getting more healthy. Take a look at Harris English. Don't hate it. I'll only mention Aaron Wise because he generally plays difficult courses the best. That's when he's at his best. So I'll just give a casual mention to Aaron Wise. because he's generally really high in my rankings, and you see even he's 97th. So take that for what you will. Otherwise, there's not a whole lot in the bottom half here of the sevens, or like the low sevens that I like. Yeah. All right, so let's move to the sixes. I got a couple of names for you, and then we got to move this along as we're getting close on time already, and we still got to make lineups. In the 6Ks, I'll throw out 3 names for you. First will be Adam Hadwin. He hadn't played U.S. Opens all that well, but again, with my emphasis on short game, look, around the green, very, very good. He's okay at lightning bent putting. Par 3s, 22nd. It's just off your screen, but he's 14th in par 5s when it's difficult. Take a look at Adam Hadwin. I don't hate Adam Hadwin at all this week. The next name I want to throw out for you all, and we talked about him a little bit Monday night, Andrew Putnam. He's only 2 for 2 in U.S. Open, so don't get too caught up in that, but he popped on a whole lot of these metrics, especially around the short game. Look at that, number 1 putter on lightning bent. He's also number 3 in fairways, so if fairways are a little bit more difficult to hit, then that's going to really suit him. Again, this is a player that I'm not, excited to throw into a whole lot of lineups, but if I'm needing some price savings, he's going to be unique. I like Andrew Putnam. But the mad scientist play, the calls, it's not 6,000, bare minimum play, but the mad scientist play of the week is at 6,300. Brent Grant. Brent Grant, top 30 in irons when it's difficult, top 35 at avoiding bogeys. Now he is not putt on lightning bent, so we don't know if he's going to like it or not. But look at these other metrics when it's difficult. And it's very small sample size. Again, he's a rookie this year. But when it has been difficult, he's been pretty good. I'm willing to take that chance, especially in a stars and scrubs type lineup where I'm getting 6,300, less than 1%. I'm not, and even in my stars and scrubs, I'm not using Brent Grant every single time. But I have no problem coming down to Brent Grant if I really am trying to get greedy and say use a Scheffler and Hovland, or like a 2, an 11 and a 10, or maybe trying to squeeze in a 10, 9 and a 9. Take a long look at Brent Grant. I think he'll play pretty well this week. All right, that's a look at the price board. Let's start making some lineups here. We're going to start with tiers. So get your questions ready as I go through tiers lineups, and then make a couple of chalky seeming lineups that you're probably going to see in your big GPPs. So for those who play tiers contests, tier 1, we have Scotty Scheffler, Jon Rahm, and Brooks Koepka. Brooks is the unique play. Scheffler's probably the best play, so I'm going to split the two, and I'll go with Jon Rahm. I'm hoping to gain a little bit of uniqueness off of Scheffler, but still have all that upside and all of that stuff. So give me Rahm in tier 1. Tier 2, Cantlay, Hovland, Rory, Xander, and Morikawa. I don't care. It's the safety of Xander in a U.S. Open. I know he's going to be chalky. Just give me Xander. Tier 3, Max Homa, Max Homa, Jordan Spieth, Matt Fitzpatrick, Cam Smith, and Tony Finau. I think Tony Finau's a worthwhile look, and if you know what to do with Jordan Spieth, then do what you will with Jordan Spieth. I'm going to take Matt Fitzpatrick in Tier 3. Tier 4, Tyrrell Hatton. Let's see, I think I need to get my big head out of the way, or at least move this over some. There we go. Tier 4, Tyrrell Hatton, Justin Thomas, Hideki, Shane Lowry, Sung Jae, Dustin Johnson, and Jason Day. Boy, if tiers ownerships are anything like Classic, then you really got to think about Justin Thomas. But for me, I'm between 2 players, Hideki and Shane Lowry. If you're wanting the safer play, And that's really odd to hear me say that, considering the withdrawal risk that Hideki always seems to have. But considering his form at U.S. Opens, if you want the safer play but the more chalky play, or if you can afford to take the chalky play, take Hideki. If you're needing uniqueness, I really like Shane Lowry. This is 1A and 1B for me. Based on the lineup that I have done so far, I would take Lowry because I took the overwhelming chalk in Xander in Tier 2. Having said that, I still think Hideki's a very good play, and this is, really, truly, this is 1A and 1B for me. I don't think you can go wrong. Tier 5, Sam Burns, Cam Young, Tommy Fleetwood, Corey Connors, Tom Kim, Justin Rose, and Joaquin Niemann. Ugh. Well, I thought I dreaded Tier 6. I don't like Tier 5. Well, it's a good thing I took Shane Lowry in Tier 4, because I'll go Justin Rose in Tier 5, because there's not a lot I like in here at all. Yeah. Give me Rose in Tier 5. That's really the only player that I'm comfortable with. Fleetwood's okay, I suppose. But I'll go Justin Rose in Tier 5. Tier 6, and this one's bad. Tier 6, Justin Suh, Sepp Straka, Luke List, Sergio, Minwoo Lee, Phil Mickelson, and K.H. Lee. Look, if you have a strong feeling about Sergio or Phil Mickelson, have at it. I don't know what to think of those two, so I'm just out on them. K.H. Lee, you would think the short game would play here, but he's not played U.S. Opens well. Justin Suh, So for me, I'm kind of between two players. I'm between Minwoo Lee and Luke List. Luke List's putter is atrocious, god-awful. But man, he's an elite level ball striker. Minwoo's kind of intriguing. Tier 6, give me Luke List, the known commodity that he's an elite ball striker, and I hope that he makes a putt at some point during the week. Just one. But Minwoo Lee's pretty intriguing. All right, there's a look at tiers, contests. Let's move to classic lineups and see if we can't find the optimal lineup in these big GPPs. So I'm going to start by building what seems to be a chalky-looking lineup. More than likely, let's go Victor Hovland because he's the price saver and still garnering some attention. You know, Victor Hovland or Rory. So then it goes Xander and probably Justin Rose. No, I think they can probably squeeze in somebody else. Looks like Tommy Fleetwood at 79 and Justin Rose. And you have 7,400 left for two players. So if we maneuver down here to the mid sevens, like we could go perhaps like a Wyndham Clark, Ricky Fowler's getting a whole lot of love, and then Mito Pereira. This is leaving $100 on the table, but probably one of the more common builds that you will see in a big GPP, almost at 15%. And that's a little bit speculative with Tommy Fleetwood. This could get even more chalky, but there's a look at what's probably going to be a pretty common balanced build. And then, substitute names out how you see fit. Really, Mito's about the only one. Well, Siwoo Kim also getting some love in the low sevens. But substitute names out how you see fit. Maybe Ricky is Adam Scott. Maybe Mito is Siwoo Kim, but you get the gist there. Of the perhaps chalky stars and scrubs, and it's going to be a little difficult because nobody in the 6Ks other than Patrick Rogers. Okay, Patrick Rogers and Adam Schenk are your two 6Ks that our fellow contestants are gravitating towards. at 7%. I actually do like Adam Schenk a little bit. I know I didn't mention him. I mentioned Putnam, but I don't mind Adam Schenk. Rogers has played U.S. Opens well for what it's worth, but those two are the most chalky in the 6Ks. But it doesn't look like our fellow contestants are coming down into the 6Ks much. So it's going to be really hard for me to try and show a lineup with Scheffler unless we really just hammer everything in the low into the board. Like Mito, Siwoo. We used Ricky. I'll say Adam Scott, but this could be Adam Scott. It could be Wyndham Clark. Shoot, maybe even Bryson. Maybe even Justin Rose. And then coming up to, either a Tommy. I don't want to use Tommy again. I might have to. Like Tommy and 87. 86 is Hideki. Again, I don't think this is all that. It might be fairly common, but I don't think this is the most chalky you can build a Stars and Scrubs. I was just trying to avoid the 6Ks because there's not a lot going on in there. It's at a little under 14. If your fellow contestants are dropping into the 6Ks, I'll use Patrick Rogers, and then we'll try to hit some more of these players. Maybe Terrell Hatton. It is what it is. It's Justin Rose, Ricky, and Adam Scott maybe. Hey Joey, good evening. Thanks for jumping in chat. You are in here just in time as we're trying to find some ways to maneuver around these chalky lineups. Thanks for jumping in chat. Hopefully you are ready for the U.S. Open. A little bit more projected owned coming down into Patrick Rogers. So take that how you will. Whatever Stars and Scrubs build you think is going to be more popular. But if we're going to try and beat that, I mentioned a couple of players in the 6Ks, so I guess I'll start with the Stars and Scrubs look. Look, Scheffler is on a different level right now, ball striking. Give me John Rahm. And at the same price as Patrick Rogers, give me Andrew Putnam, somebody who I'm pretty high on this week. And then from here, there were a few in the lower sevens. Perhaps you can take a look at Harris English. I mentioned Denny McCarthy. He's a little bit more chalky than some of these other players. I still like Gary Woodland, so we'll throw in a Gary Woodland. Moving into the upper sevens or maybe the mid sevens, like Adam Scott, he's not as popular as Ricky. Patrick Reed, throw him in. He is at 10.5, so he's not a ton of uniqueness, but 10.5% or so. That might be Bryson for me. You also think about Keegan, and now you have, either a mid-8 and a mid-9, or a low 9 and a high 8. For me, I'm going to go Matt Fitzpatrick at 83. Damn, Lowry is just out of my purview there. If we come off of Fitzpatrick, because I do like Lowry. I like Fitzpatrick a lot too. 89. Yeah, Terrell Hatton, fine. Tony Finau's fine. Justin Thomas at 8%. Like, you're looking at maybe a unique lineup here. That's sub 10% with Rahm. A 6K play that I think is going to be overlooked a little bit. Gary Woodland's just the long course, difficult course narrative. Patrick Reed always plays well when it's difficult, short game, all that stuff. Lowry and Finau. And you can maneuver this around, as well too. If you're not in on Putnam, perhaps you want to come to Adam Hadwin. Maybe you feel like Patrick Rogers is fine. You can take that chalk. You move Gary Woodland around. There's a look at a Stars and Scrubs-ish or John Rahm plus kind of lineup. If we're going to try and build a balanced build, it's going to be a little difficult just because I'm so high on Xander and he's really, really chalky. But if I'm doing a balanced build, I'm comfortable just starting Fitzpatrick and, kind of hitting these eights. Fitzpatrick, maybe Justin Thomas, Hideki. We'll throw Lowry in here as well. And we're still at, the mid-sevens. I can go Bryson. I think Justin, you might be able to get away with Justin Rose. You see how much he jumps the projected ownership there. You might be able to get away with it if you're using a Lowry and a Thomas and a Fitzpatrick. Me, I would go Bryson, who I'm really high on this week. And then 7,500, you probably can take a Ricky. You can take an Adam Scott. So I'll throw in Adam Scott in this. I'm a little bit higher on Adam Scott. Again, right at 10%. Looking at a pretty darn unique lineup. Maybe duplicated once or twice, but, Fitzpatrick, a grinder. I'm taking Justin Thomas on the 8%. He's way too talented of a player to be at 8%. Hideki just loves U.S. Opens. Shane Lowry, Bryson, Adam Scott. There's a look at one way to build a balanced lineup and, maneuver around that how you will. But the lineup that I've been really, really kind of toying around with and trying to optimize is a very, very greedy one because I've mentioned how I'm comfortable going down to Brent Grant all the way at 6,300 and at 0.5% owned. So if I'm doing that, I'm trying to be as greedy as humanly possible. I mean, I'm talking John Rahm, Xander, and Fitzpatrick, or, mix and match how you will. Maybe this is Scheffler, Rory, and Hideki, or Brooks, Rory, Morikawa, however you see fit. But I am trying to be as greedy as possible. And you see, I'm still left with an average of 7,000 per. So I don't know if I can actually pull this off. But that's the whole appeal of coming down all the way down to Brent Grant, is to try and just hammer as much as you can where you're confident in the upper end of the price board, knowing that John Rahm, Scotty Scheffler, Brooks, Cantley, Hovland, all the 10Ks are going to be popular. Majority of the 9Ks are going to be popular. That's why I really like Fitzpatrick. I'm just very confident that Xander's going to play well. It really stinks that I would have to use 2 6Ks with this, but kind of is what it is. I'll try it. We'll go Brent Grant and Adam Hadwin. That leaves us 7,000, which I don't think there was much at 7,000 that I really liked. I know I mentioned Luke List and Tiers, but that's only because I had to take somebody. I'm not crazy about anybody at 7K. So, you see the struggle that I've been myself trying to fit this greedy Brent Grant lineup. Yes, I can come off of Rahm. I can go Cantley or something, but, I'm really high on Rahm, really high on Xander. I like Fitzpatrick a lot because of the low ownership. So that's where I have been trying to optimize this lineup here, trying to figure out a way to get, 3, maybe 4 players that I'm pretty high on, and then hoping that Brent Grant plays well. So I'll stay around for a couple of minutes if anyone has any questions, or if you have a lineup shell that you want to perhaps take a look at. If you want to throw out your predictions for who wins the U.S. Open, I'm always here for that as well. And a reminder that right after the show, I will be over in Gabe's Substack chat for the Fringe. We're going to be continuing our DFS discussion over there. So if you want some more DFS talk, really consider subscribing to Gabe's article, The Fringe. It's very, very good. I would not endorse it or mention it if I didn't have all the confidence in what he is writing. And then give Gabe a follow. His Twitter handle is in the description. So I will be over there talking some more DFS right after the show. How do you think LACC will play this week? They haven't had a lot of rain lately, so it's going to be fast. It's going to be firm. Have you seen the videos regarding the rough? All that good stuff. Fast. Oh yeah, very, very fast. I think everyone is prepared for that. And because of that, because it's so fast, like those par threes, the long par threes, the 284, 290, players aren't going to be able to fly the tee ball to the green. And that's why I'm pretty high on Lowry. I think this is going to be a little bit more of a ground game than people might think. So I'm really, really high on Lowry in that regard. Sure, Darnell, if you want to go head-to-head, you tell me who you're taking. I'll let you have first choice. That way it gives me an idea of the price range that you're using. So you're going to go Hatton over Fitz. All right, I'll take that. I'll go with Fitz. Yep, sounds good. Again, just a quick reminder, I'll be over at Gabe's Substack chat. In the comments, let me know how your week is going. Would love to be able to shout out members of the community who have success for the third major of the year, the U.S. Open. Big tournaments all across DFS, no matter what site you play at. So Bruce and Darnell and P and Joey, thanks for jumping in chat. Always appreciated. Very fun, interactive tonight. Loved it. And thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, and supports the channel by liking the videos, subscribing, commenting. It's always appreciated. Good luck to you. All your contests and wagers. Again, I love being able to do what I do, taking an in-depth look at statistics, trying to win a little bit of money on the process. And let me know if you are successful. Whether you take a little bit from my shows, you take a lot, whatever. If you come and watch my shows and you are successful, please let me know, because I want to be able to shout out members of the community who have success. So for all of the wagers you have made this week for the U.S. Open, for all the DFS contests you've entered this week for the U.S. Open, for this weekend and every weekend, may all your bets be profitable.